Okay, friends, welcome to Bonaventures, the Inspired Learners platform. And this is Brother Son Podcast, episode B3. And today we have Brother Samuel Jackson from the Order of Carmelites. And is going to present something to do with the spiritual value of Reformation by St. John of the Cross, au kwa Kiswahili, thamani ya kiroho ya mageuzi ya mapinduzi kadiri ya mtakatifu Yohane wa Msalaba. Basi nipende kumkaribisha presenter wetu. Karibu kaka Samuel Jackson.
Asante sana ndugu Datus, habari za mchana nyote.
Salama.
I'm going to present of the spiritual value of Reformation in the light of St. John of the Cross. Reformation, as you know, it can be as soon as make it anew or take that which was there, to remake it, to reform it, or you can destroy it and instruct it another one. But in this presentation, just based only in spiritual renewal in the light of St. John of the Cross. In short, I say St. John of the Cross was a Carmelite hermit who didn't even move out, was just staying inside praying, but facing different challenges according to his time within the community, particularly to his brothers in the community. But what prompted me to think more about the spiritual value of Reformation from John of the Cross, it was all about reading about the different books that John of the Cross written, particularly on spirituality and the union with God. Something which appears to me to understand that there's need of make this kind of spirituality to be aware among of the people. St. John of the Cross is one of outstanding doctor of the church based on a mystical theology. He is from Avila, Spain, born around 1542 to 1599. His reform was broader in the cultural or ecclesial disorders during 16th century in Europe. Remember, during 16th century, it was post-Renaissance emphasis of human dignity, interiority, which gave rise to new question about freedom, subjectivity, and the meaning of religious life. At the same time, there is also political centralization in Spain. With those historians that can help me to remember about Charles V and Philip II, who forced the more about the unity of the church. These great emperors, the kings, they were against Protestantism. They were in charge of the Council of Trent. They were against Martin Luther. So they were helping the church to reach to the point of counter-reformation. Among of them, Charles and Philip, they're the one who initiated also the counter-reformation of the church, which led to formation of the Council of Trent. This contest shaped spirituality marked by tension between interior renewal and external conformity of the time. John of the Cross just is based about interior renewal. After seeing, remember his time around that the 16th century, the church was in the period of Renaissance, where some members want to shift from the church and to depend on humanity itself, reasons where philosophy was changed. The church was in a difficult situation. So St. John of the Cross just based on interior renewal within the church. Remember, in the Council of Trent, it was responding only in renewal of religious orders by helping them that call them back to the original charisms, particularly the Carmelites, of living these evangelical councils of poverty, obedience, and chastity, and in a special way, engaging themselves in prayer and discipline. This doctrinal clarification and institutional reform, it was emphasizing discipline, clerical education, and moral integrity. While the measures addressed visible abuses, they did not use the deeper spiritual questions concerning transformation of the inner person. Remember, the council was addressing to form moral education, clerics, different smart pertaining to the structure, but they were forgetting about to reform the spirituality of a person, the inner being of a person. Because that John of the Cross himself did explain that even if you not change the soul for someone, not change the inner being of someone, you cannot say that you have already reformed a particular person. Change begins from the heart of someone. And this external reformation to prompt John of the Cross to speak more about how to interpret, to respond, not against the Council of Trent, but to go beyond it, to address what institutional reform alone cannot reach. Let me repeat that. It was not against the Council of Trent, but to respond in a such way to go beyond what the institutions reform alone could not reach. The Carmelite order, to which John of the Cross belonged, had gradually relaxed its original contemplative legal. Along with St. Teresa of Avila, John convinced that true reform could not be achieved merely by external regulations, but it required a deep interior transformation of the soul. Reformation doesn't achieve only external regulation, rules, conducts, but it depends on the interior transformation of the soul. When I say soul, I mean the fullness of a person, the inner being of a person. Through his teachings, John reform can be seen as the retrieval of the Carmelite charism rather than innovation. It was not innovation, but a retrieval from the original, because at that time the friars were a bit relaxed, forgetting what their charism was. So John himself decided to live the life that will convince anyone. Through it, many people face challenge from him, because sometimes people will not understand him. But himself, he lived that which he knows. He ended up even being imprisoned within the community. His insistence of poverty, silence, and prayer was grounded in theological anthropology that understood the human person as ordered towards union with God through purification. His life was just ordered in such a way that a person can undergo different stages, purification of the soul, towards the union with God. That historically interprets John reform emerged as spiritual radical, but ecclesial faithful response to church seeking renewal. His contribution lies not in structured form, but orienting religious life towards its ultimate theological aim, which is union with God. Now let us come ask ourselves, why St. John of the Cross focused on spiritual reform? What was there that made him focus on spiritual reform? John of the Cross emphasized on spiritual reform arises from his experience and theological insight on the limit of external observance. That which he sees, that which he touches, that which he experiences, Joseph was that as if it was a limit for his spiritual growth. That's why he teaches that critical of reform that focus solely on rule keeping without interior conversion, rule keeping, regulation, defense conduct, but without interior conversion. He teaches that this is not only enough to make a person full converted or full reformed. His imprisonment around 1577 and 1578 in the Carmelite community in Avila by an reformed Carmelite became a decisive interpretive horizon through which suffering, purification, and obedience acquired redemptive meaning. For him, he used that chance being in prison to reflect more and to think more about the meaning of suffering, purification, and obedience acquired to acquire its redemptive meaning. How do you redeem from understanding of suffering, purification of the heart, and the obedience to the prayer and among the brothers in his community at a particular time? In his major works, John consistently interprets human corruption not primarily as moral transgressions, but disorderly desire. Human corruption is not just disordered. It's not a moral transgression, it's not moral evil, but disorderly desire. That a person can be in a certain ordered way, but can be corrupted by allowing his soul being given different fun ideas that rules his or her moral conduct. That's why I said that these are disordered desires. This perspective reflects a deeply Augustinian anthropology, in which sin fragment the will and attach it to finite goods. That Augustinian anthropology was explained that the sin to break the will, better to act, to think, and it attach the soul to the finite goods. Therefore, reform must address the level of desire rather than behavior alone. It can be changed, it can be reformed, but your desire, it is in something else apart from the behavior. What we are seeing from you can be different from what is in you. The inner being of you and what you are acting can be contrary. That is John of the Cross focused on it. His teaching reads, use scripture and traditions. When I say tradition, this church magisterium and the other same teachings. Because they emphasize transformation of the heart. John focus on detachment. That does not imply rejection of created goods. John focused on detachment, which is not implied rejection of created goods, but the ordering of love. Detachment is not a rejection, but the ordering of love within the inner being of a person. He interprets evangelical counsels as not mere ascetical practice, but instrument of freedom that enable a soul to love God without division, total submission to God himself. In this sense, spiritual reform becomes a positive movement towards fullness rather than a negative renunciation, which accompanied by forced humility. It can be humble, simple, but the second part of your heart, you know yourself how obedient you are. Consequently, John reform is theological rather than disciplinary. It was not disciplinary, it was theological, because that which he wrote is the same thing that was lived with his brothers in the community. It is supposed that only God can heal the will and unify the person, and that authentic reform unfold through grace acting within the depth of the soul. From his books, the darkness of the soul and the ascent of Mount Carmel. I've discovered also it gives the difference between spiritual reformation versus other types of reformation. And this distinction to clarify John of the Cross originality that make him think that the amendment and decision of the Council of Trent during in his time was not enough. That's why he named that those was like institutional reform, such as the mandate by the Trinity, which was operating on a visible structure and the communal norms. The basic structure of the form, introduction of a new order, introduction of different things, but there's no any indication of inner being of a person. What John affirms its necessity, interprets it as sufficient for achieving ultimate goal of religious life, which is union with God. When we basically put more effort to the structural reforms, to the institutionals, forgetting our soul, it will hinder us to reach the ultimate of religious life, which is union with God. We classify these three types of reform in the following. First of all, it started with institutional reform. Say that institutional reform focuses on structural roles in the governance. For example, in the Council of Trent, as I've said, it standardized the seminarians, being going to schools, to feed the mind, to understand, to study more music, what, each and everything. It classified what ecclesial disciplinary, define different dogmas, what definition and interpretation of the laws is not living the law. It's not the healing part of the inner being of the person. That's why I say institutional reform can be focused on the structure of the things, but doesn't touch the inner being of the person. Moral reform is concerned with virtuous behavior and the avoidance of sin. Remember, in the Council of Trent, they have been elaborated the issue of indulgences, the issue of abusement of the priest and the clergy. But during the court, this addressed the conduct of moral reform through interior motivation untouched. John writing suggests that a person can be morally upright while remain spiritually mature, and vice versa. A person can be morally upright while remain spiritually immature. And they can be spiritually mature, but spiritually mature, but morally immature. These things are interchangeable. Can you find a person is a very good person, praying, going to the church every day, holding rosary, wearing his good clothes, praying, reaching to the point saying that I'm the most holy than the others, feeling spiritual pride. That's why he was announcing this one, say that you can be also, a person can be morally upright while he remains spiritually mature. Or also, can be spiritually mature, but morally immature due to your conduct and the spiritual pride. But John still governs the self-love of subtle pride. His teaching, they are penetrating beneath ethical category to affect core of the person. For himself, he was focused how the soul of a person is affected from structural information, which does not move with the inner being of a person. Spiritual reform, he understood by St. John of the Cross that is a total transformation of a person through union with God. That total transformation of a person through union with God. It is not satisfied with external obedience or moral correctness. Can be obedient, morally good, but that which speaks in your heart speaks louder than other things. But for himself, apart from external obedience or moral correctness, but also seek purification of desire itself. Where your soul is, it's where your desire also found in. For example, a monk or a friar, in the dictionaries they call monks, also they call a friar. A friar may obey the rule of a superior, or a monk may obey the rule from his abbot, and avoid grave sin. If I say obey the rule, it is institutional reform. Avoid grave sin, it's moral reform. Yet, but still, praying to pride or self-will. Spiritual reform addresses these deeper roots. And be obedient each and everything, but you have a pride for self-will. Spiritual reform needs to clear these things. That spiritual reform is more radical and demanding. It requires the soul to pass through what John called the dark night, where all false securities are stripped away so that God alone becomes the soul foundation. The dark night is the period where the person or the soul is reached to the context of seeing that there is nothing. God has already abandoned me. Feeling pride, you accept that you're okay. You cannot move. This is the point. The prayer, you are praying, Hail Mary, our Father, or God, thinking that God doesn't hear. Normal prayers, you pray to fulfill your duty. No transformation, no touching, no feelings of it. Normally, I call that prayer for fulfilling the timetable that I'm going for prayer. In that situation, to move from that situation, Teresa of Avila, in his book of Interior Castle, he explained that when you reach a third dwelling place, you start feeling that you are okay. Start feeling spiritual pride. At that stage, John of the Cross, that is a dark night. You're in a dark night. You need to move from that stage so that God will take you back. See that these prayers, they are normal things from your mind, to your mind. They are mere prayers. They have no effect from you. That's why you experience that dark night of the soul. We need to purify it so that we can move to another state. John explained that there is two serious evils of the soul. Two serious evils of the soul that prompt a person to go far from God and disperse himself from in the community. John explained first that one serious evil is the soul, depriving of the soul of the Spirit of God. The soul deprives itself from the Spirit of God. John explained that when a person desires are focused on created things rather than on God, the soul loses its capacity to receive Spirit of God. This is a serious evil because the soul is made for God, just as a container is made to hold what is fit its shape. When the soul fills itself with affection for world things such as wealth, pressure, status, excessive attachment to people, John explained that when the soul reaches this level, looking for pressure, status, high, what, each and everything, it says that there's no space left for God in that soul. It's clearly saying that two contraries cannot exist together. Love for creature and love for God cannot fully share the same will. Doesn't mean that to hate the creature or to what God himself discovered himself through other creatures. For him means that is totally depending from a creature. Total seeing that creature is only that it can help you. That says leave the space for God to already occupied by that creature. But discover the love of God through that creature. That can be good. Because that's why it says two contraries cannot exist together. For example, a student who becomes completely preoccupied with success, praise, and the material rewards may begin to neglect prayer, moral and the inner reflection. Even if these word goals are not evil in themselves, when they dominate the heart, they broke the spiritual goal. Can be things are not evil, but when they dominate the inner being of the person, they can be broke for spiritual goals. Like trying to pour clean water into a cup already filled with the sun. The Spirit of God cannot enter a soul crowded with the sensual desires. This deprivation led to spiritual emptiness because created things are only crumbs compared to the fullness of God. Instead of being satisfied, the soul becomes restless because what is finite can never fulfill what is made for the infinite. Thus, the first serious evil, the loss of divine fullness and spiritual life due to misplaced desires. Another one, explaining another evil is weakening the soul by defiling the soul, torment or wearing. This evil journey explaining deeper. It is damage caused by unchecked desire for created things. Normal foreign desires for created things. No detachment. They desire not bring peace. Instead, they exalt and torment the soul. Don't compare such desires to restless children who are never satisfied, constantly demanding more. This shows how desire leads to continuous dissatisfaction. For example, a person who constantly chases pleasure, such entertainment, possessions, or attention may feel temporary excitement, but soon feels empty again and wants more. There you can find something good. The more days go, you can find another more good than that one. So when will we end up to find another good? Because when it gets finished, you can feel again, find something more. If this time and this cycle for demand, it weakens the soul, making it less capable of patience, self-control, and the spiritual clarity. The soul becomes darkened by different things of desires, what they desire. No longer think about God. Because the focus shifts away from higher truth to temporal satisfaction. Things which are gone, things for temporal, they are feeding the soul. Just as disturbed water cannot reflect an image clear, a soul agitated by desire cannot reflect God's sight. These desires also define the soul by pulling it towards pure and sensual thinking, away from purity and discipline. Instead of rest and strength, the soul experiences hunger that grows the more it is fed. So John of the Cross explained that this is another evil, apart from divine fullness that depend to God and the weakening the soul. The most danger in deforming the person. Because things start from the inner being of the person. Once you clean your soul, other things will fall from what the soul demanding. I also explained, I cannot finish this one without talking about the difference between spiritual reformation and the contemplation. Or how is it relating spiritual reformation and contemplation? Once we talk about contemplation, it's the very value of a Carmelite spirituality. Because they were the late Pope Benedict, Pope Francis said that you come and teach people how to pray. The value of contemplation is among of the inner value of Carmelite value, Carmelite spirituality. Because contemplation makes us discover the presence of God in our daily activities. Contemplation occupied a central place in John's theology, cannot be separated from reform. For him, contemplation is not as a technique, but as a divine gift that transforms his soul. John explained that voluntary, a reformation can't be produced by effort alone, but unfold through cooperation with grace. It's not the human effort that a person himself by his own power and energy let him start to contemplate, but cooperation with grace. Prepare your soul, yourself, ungame, ujiweke mwenyewe vizuri, ndo anza contemplation. Create the condition inside you that can make you to cooperate fully with God. To conclude, Johnny explained 3 things that enable a person to control his own understanding, will, and memory by connection with these 3 theological virtues: faith, hope, and charity. For him, we say that faith can tell us what cannot be understood with the understanding. That which cannot be understood with the understanding itself, faith can tell us. If you reach the moment say that, I know my faith, I really know this faith is no longer faith, you're already understanding it. It is a mystery. That the mind, where the mind ends, now needed to put faith there. It brings certainty to the intellect, but not clearness. That is to bring obscurity. Also, he said hope, it renders the memory empty and dark. Memory to be empty and dark, that hope. Because hope always relates to that which is not possessed, for if it were possessed. You are not possessed it. If you are possessed it, it no longer becomes hope. Hope is sin. Hope which is sin is no longer hope. So this virtue then also produces darkness in the darkness of the soul. Also, explain about charity. Charity, it causes emptiness in the will with respect to all things. It obliges us to love God above all things. This cannot be done unless we draw ourselves the affection from the inner person to abandon ourselves with God. He who does not renounce all that possessed cannot be my disciple. Jesus tells us that all 3 of these virtues leave the soul in obscurity and emptiness in respect to created things. Thank you very much. May I welcome you with some clarity, additions, and a question. Thank you very much, members.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our presenter for today in the Catholic wing. We made a good launch, though we had a network error. So sasa ni kuombe kaka Samuel Jackson uweze kueleza kwa ufupi ulichokisema kwa Kiingereza, walau kwa wale ambao tuko more comfortable with Kiswahili. Tunaweza tukajifunza mambo gani kwa haraka, walau ya summarize. Chukua muda wako walau kama dakika 3 hadi 5 tena useme kwa Kiswahili zile pointi muhimu hasa, utupeleke kwa haraka hapo. Karibu.
Asante. Hapo nilio discuss hapo. Pointi muhimu ni kwamba ilikuwa wakati wa mabadiliko ya kanisa. Martin Luther alileta mtapaka kanisa. Jambo kwa lilipelekea katika kukaa panga upya. Sasa katika kujipanga upya ilikuwa napanga tengeneza maadili ya kanisa kama vile padri waishike, hospitali wajengewe, shule watengeneze ripoti ya maswali mbalimbali yanayohusu wote. Hii ilikuwa karne ya 16. Hii karne ya 16 ndio Yohana Msalaba alikuwa hapo. Yeye pia aliona kwamba mtaguso wa Trent umesahau point moja muhimu kwake, kwamba ukarabati wa roho au kuongelewa sana. Sio kwamba alikuwa anaipinga, ila yeye alikuwa anahimiza sana jinsi tumeingilia mambo ya nje sana, bado tujengia ukarabati wa mwili. Mabadiliko ya kweli yanaanzia kwenye roho. Usipoibadilisha roho, huku nje utakuwa unafanya vitu bila upendo. Utavifanya kutimiza wajibu. So rekebisha roho zetu, huku kwingine kote hakutaweza kuwa sawa. Ndio maana alianzia hapo Yohana wa Msalaba, kwa kuchukua kile ambacho Trent ilikisema na yeye kuja kukiongezea kwamba lazima turudi kwenye roho zetu. Tukizidi tu kuongelea structure za nje, mambo ya nje sana, tutasahau vitu vya ndani. Ndio maana akaelezea kwamba ili mtu aweze kuwa kwenye taamuri na tafakari ya ndani kabisa, lazima aandae roho yake binafsi. Mabadiliko yanaanzia ndani. Unaungama, unajiweka, unajiweka kwenye utambuzi wa Mungu. Ushakuwa ndani ya utambuzi wa Mungu, hapo sasa utaweza kupata tafakari. Na tafakari ya kweli, taamuri ya kweli ni zawadi kwa Mungu. Uweze kutumia nguvu zako kusema leo na tafakari. Unaweka nguvu nyingi na tafakari, kwa sababu inahusiana uhusiano wako na Mungu. Na malengo makubwa ya mwanadamu ni kuungana na Mungu. Tunaishi ili baadaye tupate maungano na Mungu. Alizielezea pia aina tatu za mabadiliko. Alisema mabadiliko ya kikatiba, mabadiliko ya kimaadili na mabadiliko ya kiroho. Yeye akasemea sana mabadiliko ya kiroho ni muhimu. Tukiweza kumbadilisha mtu kiroho, huku nje ataweza kufanya peke yake bila hata kusukumwa kwa undani zaidi. Akaongeza maadui wawili wa roho. Maadui wawili wa roho akasema kwamba kwanza, hii roho ambapo inaanza taratibu kumkataa Mungu, kupenda vitu vya ulimwengu. Uone sura ya Mungu kwa mwenzako, ili unatamani kitu cha mtu kutoka kwa huyo mtu bila kuona upendo wa Mungu. Umepewa zawadi, huwezi ukatambua kwamba Mungu ndiye aliyefanikisha haya yote. Kingine akazungumzia kwamba pale roho inapokuwa imepungukiwa, yani imepungukiwa kabisa, imekuwa imeondoka kabisa kwa Mungu, inategemea vitu vya dunia ambavyo ni vya kupita, sio vya ulimwengu. Anasema vitu vya dunia haviwezi kukaa muda mrefu, vinapita. Haviwezi kufanya sisi tuweze kuonja ule upendo sahihi wa Mungu. Kwa maana akasema kwamba kibaya, kiovu na kizuri viweze kukaa pamoja. Nafasi ile kwa ajili ya vitu vya dunia, hiyo nafasi hiyo ndio ambayo imekufanya wewe kuondoa nafasi ya Mungu. Kwetu wa shirika alikuwa anaitwa Nicholas the Frenchman. Aliwahi kutuambia kwamba, ndugu zangu katika shirika, tafuta muda ujitafutie kitu cha kufanya ukiwa huna kazi. Kama huna kazi, shetani atachukua nafasi ya moyo wako na kukupatia wewe aina fulani za kazi za kufanya. Utaanza kutoka nje, kwenda mtaani, kufanya vitu vya watu, kwa sababu umekosa kazi. Shetani anatafutia kazi ya kufanya. Kwa hiyo keep yourself busy, yani ujituze mwenyewe, kana kwamba usije ukaingiliwa na mambo mengine ya nje. Ndio wanasema so agitated by desire cannot reflect God right. Yani roho ambayo imeungana na vitu na mapokeo ya mwili sana, mwili unachotaka unatimiza, hauwezi kuona mwanga wa Mungu. Ndio maana akaongezea mwishoni, nikakokurudi kusema kwamba aliongelea mambo makuu matatu, kwamba hizi wanasema hizi theological virtues, imani, matumaini na mapendo, kwamba yanatusaidia sisi kucontrol hizi faculty za roho, ambayo ni understanding, uelewa, kumbukumbu na will kwa Kiswahili na will kwa Kiswahili utashi. Sasa akasema kwamba imani itakufanya ujue kwamba uelewa wako sawa, pale ulipoishia ndio imani inaanzia. Pale uelewa wako unapoishia ndio imani inaanzia hapo. Lakini ukifika tu ukaielewa, basi hapo ijawa imani bado. Imani kuielewa inahitaji, yani amini kwanza ndio utakuja kuelewa. Mungu atakufunulia baada ya wewe kuelewa. Pia akasema kwamba matumaini yanaifanya memory ifute kumbukumbu za zamani na kuingia katika dai. Kumbukumbu za mabaya uliyofanya, msamaha, na hii ndio ilimfanya Martin Luther anaungama, lakini anaona kama vile mambo hayajaisha bado. Scriptures conscience inamsumbua. Ama ukiwa na hope ya matumaini na muungama nilikuwa sawa, utafuta memory mbaya, utaona umesamehewa kweli. Ndio maana akisema ukifika hatua hope umeiona kwamba hope ni nani, mshakipata hiyo, sio tena hope hiyo, mshaingia kwenye hatua nyingine. Na kusema upendo unatufanya sisi tuwe na heshima kwa vitu. Tuweze kuviona vitu vyote kama sehemu ya Mungu. Tuweze kuviona vitu vyote kama Mungu ameviumba, tuweze kugawana na wengine sawa. Nafikiri kwa kifupi ni hivyo tu ndugu zangu.
Asante sana na hongera sana kwa maandalizi ya presentation hii katika kipindi cha ubizi mwingi wa sikukuu. Basi ni mwalike yeyote ambaye anapenda kusikia kitu, kufafanuliwa jambo katika mambo ambayo kaka Jackson ameeleza. Anayependa kufafanuliwa jambo fulani, kuna kiganja hapo chini, unaweza ukakigusa ili tukusikie. Kama una jambo la kupenda kutushirikisha, unaweza ukanyosha mkono kwa kutumia kiganja hapo. Labda wakati tunasubiri yeyote anayependa kufafanuliwa jambo katika presentation hii inayohusu mageuzi ya thamani ya kiroho ya mageuzi kadiri ya Mtakatifu Yohane wa Msalaba. Labda kaka Jackson, tuchukue nafasi hii wakati tuko katika kipindi cha Noeli, tutafakari pamoja. Kipindi cha Noeli kina mengi yanayotukumbusha ujio wa Bwana katika mwili, kwa ujio wa Bwana kwa mara ya kwanza in the body or in the flesh, katika hiyo incarnation. Sasa unaweza ukatusaidiaje kuunganisha hii spiritual value ya Reformation kadiri ya John of the Cross na ujumbe wa Noel au na ujumbe wa Christmas? Alafu ukimaliza hapo utualike sasa katika New Year, tunapoelekea mwaka mpya na John of the Cross. Tunaweza tukimchukulia John of the Cross kama mtu ambaye mtakatifu ambaye tumekuwa na bahati ya kwamba anatufungia mwaka na kutufungulia mwaka, sababu katika mfululizo wetu katika presentation hizi next presentation ni tarehe 3. Wiki ijayo, Jumamosi ijayo itakuwa tarehe 3 Januari. Maana tayari tumefunga na kufungua mwaka. Kwa tumefunga na kufungua mwaka au tutafungua mwaka tayari tukiwa tuna ujumbe huu wa John of the Cross. Una kitu gani unachopenda kutushirikisha katika hichi kipindi?
Asante sana. Nilikuwa napenda tushirikishane kuhusiana na nini na Christmas yenyewe.
Sawa.
Christmas nilipokuwa natafakari, nilipokuwa kwenye novena ya Christmas, nilijiwa na jambo fulani kwamba hivi nakuaje Mungu akajifanya mtu. Nilijiuliza sana, kwa nini Mungu akajifanya mtu? Afu nikajiuliza tena, kwa nini Mungu aliamua kumtumia Bikira Maria mwanadamu? Kwa nini singeshusha tu mwenyewe? Ni maswali ambayo kwa yanisumbua sana. Lakini mwishoni nilikuja kuelewa kwamba Mungu anatumia watu kubariki watu. Mungu anatumia kiumbe hicho alichokiumba ukifanya kuwa sakramenti kubwa. Ndio maana kujishusha kwake alionyesha kwamba sisi tuwe chanzo cha unyenyekevu. Tuwe ishara nzuri ya unyenyekevu. Ndio maana kumchagua Bikira Maria ili azaliwe kupitia yeye, alimfanya Bikira Maria ajiandae, ajitengenezee mazingira mazuri ya ndani ambapo anaweza kukaa peke yake. Na hii ndio Yohana Msalaba alikuwa anafundisha kwamba mabadiliko mazuri yanaanzia ndani moyoni. Ule moyo wako ulipojitayarisha, ndivyo ambavyo Mungu ataweza kupata nafasi ndani mwako. Moyo wako umeweka majivuno, masimango, maudhi, beba watu moyoni, nafasi ya Mungu utaiweka wapi? Naposema nafasi ya Mungu, nafasi ya upendo utaiweka wapi? Nafasi ya Kristo utaiweka wapi? Father Octavian alisema kwamba tujitengenezee vipango vyetu vidogo vidogo moyoni ili mtoto Yesu alale. Je, kipango chetu umekitengeneza katika chemba gani ya moyo wako ya kumfanya mtoto Yesu alale katika Krismasi? Ndio maana Yohana Msalaba anasema mabadiliko mazuri yanaanzia moyoni. Ukikosa muunganiko na Mungu katika moyo wako, hautaweza kuunganika naye katika matendo ya mwili. Utafanya kutimiza wajibu ila hatakuwa na mzizi. Kwa mimi niwaalike ndugu zangu, kupitia Krismasi hii na mwaka unapokwenda kuishi, tujiweke vizuri katika mioyo yetu na kuongoza makwazo na machukizo kwa watu mbalimbali. Kama mioyoni mwetu tumeshajitayarisha vyema kumpokea Kristo na kupokea mwaka, tuanze mwaka tukiwa tuna mioyo safi, hatuna vinyongo. Mruhusu mtoto Yesu katika uchanga wake akuwe na sisi. Tunapoanza mwaka, mwambie Yesu, katika uchanga wako naomba ukue na nifundishe. Akitolewa hekaluni, fanya na wewe leo umetoka katika hekalu, umeingia hekaluni. Akienda kuanza kuhubiri, fanya na wewe leo ndio siku yako ya ubatizo, uanze kuhubiri neno la Mungu katika upendo. Kwa hiyo niwaombe ndugu zangu, Krismasi yetu hii na mwaka unaokuja utufanye tuwe waandalizi wazuri wa mioyo yetu ili kuweza kufanya mabadiliko makubwa ndani mwetu. Mungu anajibu kama kweli tunamuomba katika roho na kweli. Asante.
Asante sana kwa tafakari hiyo. Bado tunasubiri mwingine yeyote katika ninyi mlio join presentation ya leo ya sasa. Kwanza tunawashukuru kwa muda wenu, na tunapoelekea kumaliza sasa, labda niseme kwa katika presentation ya leo nimejifunza vitu vingi, lakini kuna nukuu moja nimeipenda zaidi kusema kweli, na sijui ni ya John of the Cross moja kwa moja au ni tafakari yako mwenyewe. Umesema sehemu fulani pale mwanzoni umesema detachment is reordering of love. Detachment is reordering of love. Ni neno ambalo lina mashiko sana, kwa sababu detachment ni msingi wa incarnation pia, na ile kenosis, kwamba Mungu hakuona kung'ang'ania umungu, Yesu ambaye anasema Kristo hakuona kung'ang'ania ule umungu, akaamua kudetach, akaamua kuwa mwanadamu. Na ni hata John of the Cross na watakatifu wengi kama Francisco wa Assisi wanaongelea poverty, na lugha ziko mbalimbali. Sisi wa Franciscani tunatumia poverty zaidi kuelezea hii sehemu. Wa Carmeli nyinyi na mnatumia nothingness kama kina John of the Cross na wengine. Hii spirituality ya poverty inakuja katika msingi wa detachment. Hebu unaweza kanisaidia kuelewa detachment kama reordering of love katika karne hii, katika nyakati zetu hizi ambazo tuna mambo mengi ya labda kimasomo, labda shughuli mbalimbali zinatusonga. Hii reordering of love inakuaje katika kipindi hiki cha kiinternet? Reordering of love inaweza kumaanisha nini?
Asante. Haya ni maneno ya Yohana Msalaba mwenyewe.
Asante.
Detachment is the reordering of love. Binafsi ukimsoma Yohana Msalaba anahitaji tafakari ya juu kwa kila sentence yake. Kwa maana nyingi unasoma commentary, na kwa sababu ametumia mystic, ametumia lugha fulani ambayo inamfanya mtu atafakari zaidi, maana yeye mwenyewe ni contemplative. Sasa tukisema the ordering of love, hali ya sasa hivi kwamba ukiona maadui, ukiona ugomvi, ukiona sheria nzito zimewekwa, ukiona watu wanafarakana, ukiona familia zikae vizuri, ujue upendo hujakasa. Yaani hawajaweka upendo katika mpangilio mzuri. Upendo hujatenda vizuri katika haya mazingira. Ndio maana Yohana 7 anasema tu detachment is the ordering of love. The ordering of love katika dunia sasa hivi na utandawazi. Sisi tumekuwa masengenyaji wa kusema watu, tumekuwa kudharau watu. Na upendo wetu upo katika vitu. Humanity haipo tena. Save for humanity haipo. Huwezi kumsaidia mwanadamu wenzako mpaka awe kusaidia kitu au mpaka awe na kitu. Ndio nakwambia kwamba ile Yohana 3:16 waraka wa kwanza Yohana 3:16 kwamba jinsi Mungu alipenda ulimwengu hata akamtoa mwanawe pekee ili kila mtu amwaminie asipotee. Kwamba kwa sababu ya upendo Mungu alijishusha kama sisi tuliyesemea. Sababu ya upendo. Sisi ni nani tusiishi bila upendo? Sasa upendo ulivurugika. Baada ya upendo kuvurugika, sasa Reformation, detachment. Hivi sasa unapotoka kusema detachment kujiachia. Unapojiachia katika moyo, unaingia katika upendo. Maana Yohana 7 alisema, where there is no love, put love on it and it draw love. Yesu kusema kwamba ukikosana na mtu, jisogeze kama unajipendekeza, unamsaidia. Yohana msema mwenyewe anasema kama adui yako, kama ndugu yako anakosea, mtendee matendo mema. Hapo ni kali order na unapangilia upendo upyo kurudi mwanzo. Upendo unarudisha katika wasili wake, afu unamsaidia. Umeona masikio na kuomba unachomsaidia. Kama hauna ongea naye maneno mazuri, mpe nafasi ya kumsikiliza. Hapo unaupangilia upendo upyo. Unarudisha katika uhalisia wa upendo ambao Mungu alifanya mkomboa mwanadamu kwa sababu ya upendo. Nakushukuru ndugu dadu, kama kuna kingine.
Aha. Asante. Asante kwa kweli, umefafanua vizuri. Basi nichukue nafasi hii kuwashukuru wote mlioshiriki, na kwa sababu ya muda, basi hapa ndio mwisho wa episode yetu kwa leo.